What's up, everybody? It is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast coming at you on a very special night, Thursday. We've kind of transitioned back to Wednesday for the most part. We did Thursdays not only to accommodate our own selfish schedules, John and myself, but we have a special guest tonight. It's been a little while since we've had a very special guest, and a very, very special one indeed. We'll bring him on in just a second. I'm Anthony Cosenza. He is John Sheeran. We are in the middle of summer, John, and preseason game 2 is upon us, but we're also looking back at about a week and a half ago, some very special news and a very special event that surrounded the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, man, this is the best part of summer. It's the late part of summer, which means it's about to be fall, which means we're about to get to real football pretty soon.
Yeah.
But of course, the NFL calendar, big part of it, signifying like that transition to summer to fall, is the Pro Football Hall of Fame enshrinement. And we saw something that we haven't seen in a quarter of a century, and that was a former Cincinnati Bengal finally get his due, and we're going to talk to the man who helped make that happen.
Yeah, we've got a little video here before we bring on Ken Riley II, the son of Ken Riley, who he did the speech and the induction of his father, did an amazing job, and obviously made his family proud, made Bengal Nation proud, so we'll bring him on in just a second. But you know what was cool about the last time we had Mr. Riley on, it was when it was his father's being inducted into the Ring of Honor, and now we're talking Hall of Fame. So we're doing some really big episodes and celebratory episodes, which is awesome. We're going to play a quick video and then bring in Ken Riley II.
Well, special shout out to Bengal Jim and his wife. He's been a great support over the past few years. To my dad's former teammates, a lot of who are here today, Ken Anderson, Isaac Curtis, Louis Breeden, Reggie Williams, Leap and Lamar Parrish, and some of his peers, Mel Blunt, James Lofton, Coach Forrest Gregg. This guy's always been in support. Also want to thank the Bengals organization, Coach Paul Brown, who gave him that start, Mike Brown, and all of the Brown family. And to everyone who loved the game the way that he did. It's been a long time coming, Dad, but you made it. Thank you.
So joining us on the program once again, Ken Riley II. And Mr. Riley, congratulations to you, to your family on this great event. I know it's been, as you said in that video, a long time coming, but well deserved and well done on the enshrinement, the speech, and everything. How are you? I'm sure you're still basking in all of it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a whirlwind ever since the announcement was made. The planning began then, through the Super Bowl and then just all the way up to August. So definitely a once in a lifetime opportunity, and just so excited that he's finally in, and it's just been a humbling experience.
Well, you did a great job, as I mentioned, and I think what's really cool about it, and I don't have this video queued up, unfortunately, but the coolest thing about it, I think, was, if I'm not mistaken, when you and your family got the call about your father being formally enshrined in the Hall of Fame. It was from Anthony Munoz, or that was one of the first people you heard from, I believe, the lone Bengals Hall of Famer at that time. So even though it wasn't maybe someone directly with the Pro Football Hall of Fame or that sort of thing, it had to be a pretty cool thing hearing from that from Mr. Munoz about this. And I know that he is just thrilled to not be the only Bengal player in the Hall of Fame now and joined by his former teammate.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great guy, Hall of Fame person, man as well. But it was actually when I got the call, the president of the Hall of Fame actually was on the phone, Mr. Jim Porter,
Oh,
and
okay.
then he handed the phone over to Anthony. So that was again one of those just memorable experiences that I'll never forget, and it was just a sense of relief that he was finally in, and no better person to get that call from the man himself, Anthony Munoz, who of course was the first Cincinnati Bengal to be inducted.
So I want to talk about that great speech that you made, because I mean it goes without saying that so many more people now know who your dad was and what he did with the Bengals and then post-playing career, and not just because he was enshrined, but because you had the chance to take that stage and talk about him in just such an elegant and beautiful way. And I think there was some things that even Bengals fans probably didn't know about him that they now know because you had that opportunity. What was, like, I guess, your favorite, anecdote or fact, or just your favorite part of the speech that you were most proud of to just tell to the world?
Well, first of all, just happy to get through it because I knew I was definitely going to be emotional. Like I said, my mom was there, and knowing she was there from the beginning, and all my family was there. My sons and my nephews, my sisters and aunts, and like I said, all friends and family were there. So really just wanted to make sure that I was able to get through the speech and, represent and and let people know the man who he was. And that was my entire goal. It was still bittersweet. I was hoping I was in the stands watching while he was making the speech. But it was one of those things, and I was happy I was able to do it and represent him. So again, this whole year has been one that I will never forget. Been waiting for a long time for this, and for it to finally come to a head is just great.
Well, we obviously you did a fantastic job, and we are so happy for you and your
Thank
family.
you.
Talking to Ken Riley, the second son of Ken Riley, and the speech giver of for his father to get him enshrined in the Hall of Fame. I talked about it before we brought you on about how thankfully the times you've been on this podcast, we are talking about the great recognition, the deserved recognition that your father received in first the Ring of Honor and then now the Hall of Fame induction. I guess I'm just kind of curious what you feel like and what your family may feel about these last couple of years and the Blackburns being kind of at the forefront of a lot of different things and really engaging the fans and engaging the former players, their families, that sort of thing. I don't want to say that wasn't necessarily the case before because I haven't been behind that curtain personally. And I know Mike Brown is a guy who has shown a lot of care for many, many former players in his own way. But I guess my question is just, did you kind of feel and see this groundswell of momentum? I know you also mentioned Bengal Jim, a great fan ambassador, Bengals team ambassador. Did you kind of feel really a strong push, particularly these past couple of years, that really got this thing over the finish line and your father his rightful place in Canton?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. It's all about timing, and he started gaining momentum. In like 2019, he was he was in the finals after Drew Pearson, and then the following year Cliff Branch got in. So the momentum was building and building, and once you kind of make it to the finals, the next step should be to make it in. So I knew we were close. The Ring of Honor definitely was another feather in that cap, and started that momentum in the process. And like you mentioned, the Browns and the Blackburns, Katie and the daughter Elizabeth, and the entire Bengals organization, Mr. Mike Brown, they have really been so supportive. And then the guys like yourselves, the podcast and the fans, the Who They Nation, man, I can't say it enough. Like how I believe that played a big part in it, and it continued to gain momentum. And his peers, I mentioned Mel Blunt,
Yeah.
great guy, James Lofton, Charlie Joyner, those guys, his peers, Kenny Houston. I would reach out to them and got videos from him and the support from his peers. I really think that was what that pushed it over, was the support from Hall of Famers that were already in the Hall of Fame that really supported my father, and with all of that momentum and the support of the peers and the Ring of Honor, and he was basically in every other Hall of Fame. It was just the perfect storm, and excuse me, and it was just the great timing to get him in.
Well, like you and Anthony kind of touched on, shouting out like a single fan in a Hall of Fame speech is pretty rare, but it's just kind of a testament to how kind of special this community is. And obviously, Bengal Jim has done so much, not just for your father, but for all other Bengals players who hope to get in. Like, what is the community, the Bengals fandom, that this fan base kind of meant to you throughout this process, and specifically Bengal Jim?
Bingo Jim, like I said, considered a great friend. We stay in contact throughout the year, and he's, like I say, he's awesome. Him and his wife Trish, I can't say it enough. But in general, the Houday Nation, like I said, guys like yourself, I wish I could name everybody, but you guys do a great job too. And even if they don't have podcasts, no, you're welcome. Just like being in Cincinnati, the support not only for former players but the current players. It's just amazing. And some of those guys don't have social media, but the social media presence that, Houday Nation has now is continuing to grow, and it's just awesome. And I can't thank, you guys enough for what you do. And like I said, if I could have said everybody's name, I definitely would have, because you guys play a big part of it, especially on Sundays. It means a lot to those guys that are on that field. Home field does make a difference, and I think that does give momentum. And sometimes when you're tired and you can't go on, that helps. So just having that backing, and like I say, even with the former players, it means a lot to those guys.
Well, you mentioned a lot of former players in that speech, or that video clip we played there. And of course, the name that pops out, Ken Anderson, seems to be a guy that should very well be next in line, and hopefully gets his place in Canton as well. We as a show and we as a fan base have always, put the Kens in, has always been kind of a mantra, and he's been on this show saying, your father was more than worthy of getting into Canton. But you mentioned a name, Lamar Parrish, and that's a guy, for some reason, he had a stellar career, played with your father, and they created this great tandem of cornerback tandem for the Bengals. He's not a guy that's talked about a ton. He kind of started to get a little more recognition with his name being on the Ring of Honor list of late, but a guy from yesteryear, a guy who didn't end his career with the Bengals and stuff, but was outstanding. Special teams player, cornerback, etc. It sounds like you got to maybe, speak with him or chat with him this weekend and stuff. I don't know, your thoughts on him in Bengals history, Ring of Honor, maybe even Canton, given some of his accolades that he accrued in his career.
Well, I mean, that's a great point. First, I just want to touch on Ken Anderson. Like, next week is actually the announcement for the finalists. So I'm hoping this momentum will carry on, that he actually makes it as a finalist, because he definitely deserves it. So just waiting for, to see what happens next week. But Lamar Parrish, definitely, and Isaac Curtis are the two guys that you don't hear about that definitely need to be talked about and needs to be next in line, to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He was a phenomenal returner, great defensive back. I always say, he was kind of like Dion before Dion, because he did it all.
Yeah.
He scored on a punt, then he took an interception back for a touchdown. I mean, he scored anywhere you could, fumble recoveries, but definitely just a dynamic punt returner and a great defensive back as well. And they just made a great tandem with Casanova. That safety, I was just talking to him. They had Casanova, my dad, and Lamar. That was a heck of a secondary back then. It's just unfortunate that Pittsburgh had a great secondary too, so they were kind of overshadowed, and they were winning Super Bowls. But back then, the AFC was the secondaries were very, 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 very good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Yeah, we need to get Mr. Parrish in the Ring of Honor first. I feel like that's
Yes,
definitely due in the
I
next.
definitely agree. Yes, I wholeheartedly agree that he definitely needs to get in next. Another favorite of mine is Reggie Lewis. Reggie Williams. I'm biased, but those are my guys: Reggie Williams, Lamar Parrish, Isaac Curdy. Those were the guys that when I was growing up were, like I said, the superheroes to me. But I definitely agree. I mean, it's a lot of deserving guys, and you just wish you can get them all in. But especially
Yeah.
the older guys now, I definitely want to get them in to make sure that they're able to enjoy it while they're here. So that's the biggest thing that I like to push for those guys because again, while they're still here, want to give them their roses and flowers. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one cool thing I thought about your father going in this year is that he was joined by other really great defensive backs and just a great class in general. But like Darrell Revis and Rondé Barber, who played in more of the modern era. I'm assuming you got to talk with some of those guys. Was there like a moment that you kind of shared with a fellow inductee that kind of stood down in your mind?
Yeah, I mean the entire class. You form a bond with those guys, and they accepted me just like family now because it starts way back when you're announced as back in the Super Bowl. So from that point on, you're attending meetings and you're seeing each other. So it's definitely a close knit group, and everybody else that went in with my father. Like I said, I treat them like family now. From the Chuck Howleys to DeMarcus Ware, Zach Thomas, the entire class, and Rondé, and it was like a secondary group. So Rondé and Revis Island, for my dad to go in with those guys. So you had three corners, but those guys were unbelievable as well.
Talking with Ken Riley II, who is fresh off of we gave him a little bit of a break since his travel and whirlwind schedule, but he is nice enough to join us on the program and talk about his experience in Canton and his father's enshrinement. Going to speak with him for just a couple more minutes. And by the way, I've got this pinned up here from Mr. Whisper. Mr. Generosity is what we call him on this show because he's always given us the super chats. If you are so inclined, and we'll do this over the next couple of episodes that we do, whether it's live or anything, if you are so inclined to give a super chat, and we'll hear more about the Ken Riley Foundation in just a second. We're going to pool some of those in the YouTube super chats. We've also got a link on a story on Cincy Jungle with all of this episode's media and everything straight to the donation portion of the website that you can just go right in there and donate. We'll hear just a little bit more about that in just a minute. But thank you, Mr. Whisper. We'll put that as part of a donation. I don't know if we asked you this last time. Who were some of the guys that your father said were like, man, that guy he just gave me all kinds of fits. Just gave me all kinds of fits on the field. I don't know if you ever shared that or anything like that, but I assume probably some of the guys on the Steelers, that he went up against. But if there was someone in particular that he said, man, that guy just gave me fits.
The number one guy was his teammate, Isaac Curtis.
Curtis, yeah.
Isaac Curtis he always said that the guy that gave him fits was Isaac Curtis because he was just a combination of speed, great route runner, and have hands. But other than Isaac, his teammate, he always mentioned Paul Warfield was a great route runner, and then of course he used to go against the Steelers twice a year. So Lamar had Lynn Swan, and my dad had Stallworth. So they definitely had some battles, for years. So Stallworth was one of them, but Paul Warfield and Isaac Curtis, those names always stuck out.
So when you were up so this was your first time in Canton, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. So because I think the first part of your speech was, I said I would never come here until my dad was enshrined. So that was good, which I thought was very important to mention. So good. So kudos to you. But just like I guess impressions of the Hall of Fame and impressions of your dad's exhibit and Anthony Muniz exhibit, like what was the whole first trip like?
I mean, I love the game. It's like a kid in the candy store. I've always wanted to go. I mean, trust me, I did. But, because even now the Black College Hall of Fame, that exhibit's inside of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And so it's just a building full of just like history of the football. So whenever when I was in there, it was like, man, I'm at Disney World, Disney World for football,
Yeah.
and I can never get enough of it. I mean, you probably have to go back several times to really, because there's so many things that so much history there, and it's a great place. And they're expanding now. They have a water park, they have Ferris wheel, they have restaurants, so they're making it a destination. And when it's really said and done with that area, it's going to be great. So it's going to be great for families, and because there's something for everybody.
I have yet to go, so now I
Same.
have even more reason to. I mean, I'm in Southern California, so it's not just the easiest trek for me, but yeah, I mean, now I've got even more reason to go. But before we get you out of here, Ken, thank you so much. We already took over 20 minutes of your time. I appreciate it so much. Talk a little bit about the Ken Riley 13 Foundation. We gave a little bit of support when we did the Ring of Honor with the first inductees, which your father was part of that. And so now we want to try and help out how we can. I know there's been a little bit of a pause, and for good reasons, right? I mean, celebrating your dad, getting into the Hall of Fame, and then some not so good reasons, maybe with COVID stuff and everything. So I'll put up the screen and everything, but tell us a little bit about the foundation, and then of course, how we can support.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thanks, Mr. Wilson, too. I saw the donation, so I appreciate that. But the Ken Riley Foundation was near and dear to my father's heart because, like I said in the speech, he was a community man. He cared about his community and the kids in there. He wanted to give those kids who maybe didn't have opportunity to go to school, but take a trade or even a 4-year school to show that there's different ways to have success outside of sports as well. And so he created that foundation along with the EPAC. That was something that he partnered with the community. But it's basically to give back to underprivileged kids who may not have the opportunity to outside of to be able to go to a 4-year school, but to maybe pick up a trade. And one of the big events that we had was a golf classic. It's been on hold now, with COVID and now with the Hall of Fame. So we're going to continue to work with the foundation. Just not quite sure what's that going to look like in the future, but we definitely want to continue to honor what he started and make sure that we're giving back to the community and helping those kids because Bartow was his home, Florida was state, and that's one of the things that he was proud about. So we always are thankful for anybody that give to that foundation, and want to make sure that we're doing the right things by continuing to give to those kids.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I put the donate link and the info link, separate links in our live chat. So we will, we'll try and pool some money there, like I said, and we'll keep hammering it on the website. We'll collect over the next couple of episodes and hopefully add in some of our own funds and bring some support there and do what we can. And I said it before we took the air, Ken. Anytime you have something with that you want us to share or promote, you are welcome on this show anytime, of course. But if you have something that you want us to share on behalf of the foundation, or if we can support something like that, open door for John. And I don't want to speak for John, but I think I know John well enough. Yeah. That it's open door. So let us know, and we'll be happy to pump that through our podcast, through our various sites and stuff like that for sure.
Well, I think I appreciate that, and like I said, I really thank you guys for just giving me the platform and the platform to speak about my father way back when we were talking about the Ring of Honor, because I do think they played a great part, and it's always heartwarming, just for guys like yourself who probably I don't know how old you guys were, but probably never really seen him play, but just to have that support and to help him get to where he's finally in the Hall of Fame, I really appreciate that. And all of the Who Dey Nation and the fans, like I said, I can't really thank you all enough because it really means a lot. And if there's anything I can ever do for you guys, feel free to to reach out to me, and I'll make sure I'm doing my part.
I appreciate that. And I don't want to say your father's induction was necessarily more important than Anthony Munoz's, but it was still very, very special to this fan base. And I hope you felt that. I hope, because this was this was kind of the, hey, this is a guy who's deserving, long overdue. And I hope you felt the fans were 110% behind you and your family, pushing. And I think that's why it's different from Munoz getting in, because, Munoz was a while ago and everything, but this was also just a lot of fans behind you, a lot of fans pushing for this and clamoring for this. And so that's what I think. It makes it a very special occasion that your father's in Canton.
Oh, for sure. Like I said, that fan support means the world. And I'm just praying that the momentum continues. I definitely don't want it to be another 25 years. Like I said, next week, I would like to hear Ken Anderson as one of those finalists. Man, that would, I wanted to say it in my speech, but I didn't want to I didn't want to speak too boldly, but I was like, this is the year the Bengals, Ken Anderson gets in, Willie Anderson gets in, and the Bengals win their first Super Bowl. That'll just top off the year. That's the year that I think that we're going to have, and I'm just putting it out there in the air, because if you don't, then, it won't happen. So, I'm speaking into it.
We're manifesting.
Yeah,
definitely. So,
I guess, we didn't even really ask you about the current team, because we wanted to know so much about your experience. I guess I lied. We'll get you out of here after this. When you're expecting Super Bowl, or your expectations, your hope or outlook for this team is Super Bowl this year or bust?
As long as Joe Burrow's healthy and behind the center, there's the possibility of Super Bowl. I always think that he's our guy, and if he's there, that's the goal. And I think that's the goal of the team. I think that's the goal of the organization. So I think they have all the talent and skill. Sometimes it takes a little bit of luck, like I said, to make sure that everybody stays healthy. But if we're healthy, then we definitely can play and beat anyone. So like they said last year, they have to play the Bengals, and they're gonna have to play them to win. And so I definitely think that they can win it this year. And I'm speaking into existence that they will get their first Super Bowl, and we get the Andersons in this year. So
yeah. Well, last time we had John, like I said, it's been too long, but last time we had John, Ring of Honor Super Bowl appearance. Now Hall of Fame Super Bowl win. Hopefully
that's how that works. Yeah.
Hey, that sounds great to me. That sounds great.
Well, hey, take care. All the best to you and your family. Again, like I said, open invitation anytime you want to come on here. We would love to have you on, and if there's anything we can do to help continue to help Ken Riley 13 Foundation, let us know. We'd love to do it.
All right. Thanks for your time, my guys. I appreciate the game.
Take care. Great job this I guess a week and a half ago. Great job.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Ken.
Bye-bye.
Ken Riley II, and awesome dude, classy dude. We probably took up too much of his time. I always love hearing from him. I love having him on the show. We've only had him on a couple of times, but man, he's just about as genuine as they come, John.
And I mean, what a unique experience, man. Like, obviously, like he said, he would have preferred it if he had watched it from the stands, but to be up there and to speak about his dad for 10 minutes and like his crowning achievement, it's pretty special, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And he's been such a I don't know what the best word to use is, but I guess such a great ambassador on behalf of his dad, and a great representation for his family and for his dad. Did a great job on that speech and everything. So very, very exciting. And we wanted to kind of rehash that a little bit, get the good vibes going, Hall of Fame vibes and everything here. Want to remind folks, this is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast, part of the Cincy Jungle podcast channel. And you can get this show along with, we mentioned his name a couple of times, Bengal Jim, talking football with Bengal Jim and friends, as well as the coach Matt Minnick, Coach Speak and Chalk Talk 3 and Out. All of those are on our podcast channel through your various audio streamers, whether that's iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, all of them. And then, of course, if you like what we do on the video side, and if you want to submit a YouTube super chat to go to Ken Riley 13 Foundation, we will get that over to him. You can subscribe to the channel underneath John there by the Cincy Jungle icon. Click that. the subscribe button, click the bell to be notified when we go live, when new content is available, and give us a thumbs up if you would. If you like what we're doing on that side of things, and we'll keep pumping you with content here as the preseason rolls on. And with that, John, we will transition the last half of the episode to preseason week 2. Preseason week 1 was a mixed bag, and that's being generous, I think. And we talked about that and broke that down on the post game show as a fun little roundtable. Usually I'm flying solo on that, so it was good to have you and the 3 and out gents on that fun show there. But let's transition here. I guess we could start here about who needs to show more, who needs to show up, who needs to impress more this week. For me, and it's a tough. It's tough to bring this player up because I know he's got an injury he's dealing with, but I just feel like Charlie Jones maybe needs to just a guy that pops up top of mind. And then of course we'll talk more specifically about a certain right tackle or left tackle, I guess, in a little bit. But that's just one name to me that, he was having trouble separating. Of course, the quarterback situation and offensive line situation when he was getting snaps was a little tenuous.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's 1 week, and he is dealing with a torn labrum, and I feel like I reject the notion that a torn labrum has nothing to do with route running, because you still feel it when you're moving, and it's still like it's still a part of your motion. And obviously, separation isn't just not touch; it's also physical, right? It's a lot of hand fighting in the route. It affects you, right? It's not as bad as because I think Jonah Williams had like a torn labrum and he had to get that surgically repaired in his rookie season. It's not the same as, getting pressed 60 times a game as an offensive lineman, but I do think it does have an impact on how effective he can be as a receiver. And he's going to continue dealing with that as the year goes on. But I think I want to see a better plan to involve him, because I think a lot of his shortcomings came from when he was on the outside, and it's not really where he's going to win in the NFL. He's going to win in the slot. So he had 23 of his 38 or so snaps on offense was in the slot. I want to see that percentage more focused inside. I want to see some just easier plays for him to get the ball in space. Obviously, you want to see him kind of win in the advanced ways that we're kind of seeing from Yosivash. But the injury I think is definitely going to impact him, and I want to see them kind of involve him a little bit better. My guy to show more. I mean, at this point, one of these quarterbacks has to step up. And again, they're backup quarterbacks, right? Unless they are one of the handful of top tier backups, how good they are is not really going to matter in the grand scheme of things. Like, if you don't have Burrow, you're kind of screwed anyways.
Right.
But this is Trevor Siemian's first time to start with, I guess the technically the ones, but the second string, right? He's going to go into the first half, and he's going to take all those reps with the guys that he's practicing with the most. This is his chance to really assert himself, because Jake Browning did not do that in the past week as the starter, the technical starter of this game. And both guys have just been really kind of falling off a cliff here in these past couple of weeks, ever since really the pads came on and things started to get more physical. But Siemian, I think, showed to have the livelier arm, I want to say, last week. And I think he still made some impressive throws in practice. So this is his chance to really just kind of shut the door on this kind of weak little battle that they have going on behind Burrow. And he was always, I guess, kind of the favorite to win, just because he's more experienced and he has actual starting experience in the league. But he's got to show more, he's got to show better, and he's going to have the chance to do that.
Well, you are Mr. King of the segue here, because that was one of the topics we had set up. I think we touched on this a little bit in the post-game report, and that was, were his struggles a byproduct of the line he's playing behind it, late in the game, and all, and some of the players, and those guys also in practice, they kind of mix and match who they're utilizing and playing with for the most part. So I guess him starting and being behind a starting offensive line, quote unquote, maybe that bodes well for him a bit more this week, and we may see a little bit more, also maybe a little bit more comfort level, just kind of preseason week 1. Maybe there are a little jitters, even if it is preseason and he's a longtime veteran in the league. But I do think because this coaching staff has shown that they like Jake Browning. I do think this is a bit of a big night for Trevor Siemian and his, to your point there, I mean, making some ground in the backup quarterback race and, making a statement and kind of turning around things from last week, which wasn't the prettiest.
Yeah, it's like at this point, it's just who can flash at least once, right? Because we just kind of yet to see that. And I mean, the Bengals aren't necessarily strangers to having quarterbacks relatively pop off in the preseason. We just saw it last year from Jake Browning, right? He gave Brandon Allen a run for his money for the backup job, but they kept Allen because he was more experienced and he had experience actually, working with Burrow during the season. So this was Browning's chance to, Simeon was the new guy. He was the veteran, but they didn't marry to him by any means with the contract that he signed. So this was Browning's like real chance to just kind of grab that and run with it, but he hasn't. So Simeon is just left here again as a guy who's I think over 30 years old, and again has worked with Brian Callahan in the past. So just shows something at this point. I think the Bengals are just dying to see just one flash where like, hey, we're at least somewhat confident in this guy playing emergency snaps during the season should anything happen.
I mean, do you have, based on what you've seen or have not seen so far from these guys, but the backgrounds and different things, I mean, do you have a current preference on a backup quarterback for the Bengals going into week one? I mean, are you hoping that Simeon kind of separates, or is it, hey, maybe Browning continues to develop and turns into someone that can do at least some of the things, definitely not all of them, some of the things that Burrow can do? I
think Simeon just kind of fits more with what the Bengals offense actually is, because again, it's different to judge them with the actual starters and with the second and third string offensive linemen and receivers. I think Simeon's the better athlete. He can evade pressure a little bit more, and I think he's just got a little bit more to his arm. So now that he's kind of up to speed with the playbook and pretty much equal at this point to Browning, considering the amount of reps that they've shared throughout the preseason, I would lean towards Simeon. But if they want to keep Browning just because they've developed him for longer, he's younger, they think they can even develop his mechanics and his throwing motion and his arm power even more, then I can see that. At the end of the day, like, it's marginal at best, the difference between both these guys, and it's just about preference. But if I were to say right now, I would probably lean Simeon. But again, he still has to show something, against the Falcons.
Yeah, and for those who need a refresher on who Jake Browning was coming out of college, and he was the guy that when he had, who was it, Pettis and of course John Ross, right? He was in Washington from 2015 through 2018, and in that 2016 season when he had both of those guys. So as a freshman, he threw for 2,955 yards, 16 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Then in 2016, absolutely exploded, 3,430 yards, 43 touchdowns, John, to 9 interceptions. So he dropped his interceptions by 1 and increased his touchdowns by like 27. So, I mean, he just had a huge jump, and then kind of went back down to reality a little bit in 2017, 19 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, and then 16 to 10 as a senior. So, I mean, as a sophomore, I think a lot of people were looking at him coming out in the next couple of years going, wow, this might be the next, kind of big thing coming out at quarterback. And then all of a sudden, maybe some of those players around him drop off, get drafted, that sort of thing. And you kind of see a little bit of a crash back down to reality with him. But I mean, the production is there, and there hasn't really been, at least at the college level, there never really was a super high volume of interceptions. It was more kind of, is this guy capable of doing a lot of things at the NFL level, or just was it all about that supporting cast with the Huskies when he was in college?
Yeah, one of the Pac-12's last great heroes, huh?
Yes, a Pac-12 former hero. That's right. All right. Well, here's the big question right here. I mean, we may have been a little easy on Jackson Carman, particularly, I think, as we went back and watched some of the stuff in the film from preseason game 1. There was, there were some good elements from him, but there were some really questionable plays at the end. I think he was reinserted back into the game, and there was kind of just, I don't know what was really happening there. So, there was the one where he appeared to not know the snap count along with Cody Ford, but then just kind of stood there. There were some just really weird plays by Jackson Carman in this one. He has seemingly fallen pretty far behind the right tackle competition, and then, has been playing kind of backup left tackle here. So, what do you think this week for Jackson Carman?
I think he's going to see a lot of left tackle. That's where they started working him again at the beginning of this week. And part of that is I think they want to see Deontay Smith at right tackle, because Deontay Smith playing right tackle is going to be very important if he's to be this first tackle off the bench. I don't know what would happen if Orlando Brown gets hurt. I don't know if they would just put Jonah Williams at left tackle or if they would put their swing tackle there, but they at least have options. What I do know is that, and we've harped on this constantly because it comes straight from the coach's mouths, specifically Frank Pollock, you need to be able to play multiple positions. Jackson Carman has technically played 4 positions on this offensive line. He's played only one of them somewhat adequately, and there's a lot of context with that. Jackson Carman, he just seems like a left tackle, and that's fine if you can do it really well. It's not so great if you can do it only kind of well in certain conditions. So if they want to keep him on the team, he's just an emergency left tackle who at this point probably doesn't dress because, again, he can only play one position adequately. And even still, we haven't really seen him play left tackle since January, right? So he's probably going to see a decent amount of snaps there in this game, I'm assuming, with what constitutes as the second string, so the second group that comes out onto the field. And we're going to see Deontay Smith either at left tackle or right tackle. Again, there's a lot of players at tackle right now for the Bengals, and they're still sorting things out. But Jackson Carman's probably not a swing tackle anymore. He's not a guard. If he's just a left tackle, I question how valuable that is when, again, you're not going to be a starter.
So you bring up a good point about the not only about Carman, but about the right tackle spot and Jonah Williams. So if you go back and look at Jonah Williams' career, he was Zach Taylor's first pick. The rookie season was a wash because of what was that, a shoulder injury, I think.
Yeah.
Missed 6 games the following year. Did play in all 16 regular season games there, but the next couple of years. But we know there's an injury history there, right? And so that's what pressed Carman into action in the postseason. And so I say this. I think Jonah Williams is poised for a better year than maybe some predict at right tackle. I do think that I think we're in for a pleasant surprise there, but I think there needs to be a lot of trust in who your backup right tackle is. To a bit to your point there, when you're talking about working Deontay Smith there, Hakeem Adeneji's bounced around a little bit. They're using Sharping like everywhere. They need to, that's kind of why also, there's Cody Ford. There's all kinds of guys that have kind of, okay, let's play them at different spots here. They need to have a lot of trust, not only in the starting right tackle going into week 1, they need to have a lot of trust in whoever that backup right tackle is. And I hate to say that because, again, I think Jonah's poised for a good year, but there is a pretty significant injury history there. And, if there is, even if it's for a game or 2 games or something, they need to have somebody that they can rely on to give them, a somewhat quality game if need be.
Anthony Collins is not walking through that door,
No.
So Anthony Collins is great. I think the Bengals probably win a Super Bowl if Anthony Collins was still playing the past couple of years. But Hakeem Adeniji is another name that we haven't really talked about, but I don't think he's necessarily had a bad camp. He's consistently been like an adequate practice player. It's just when he's in the playoffs and he's up against the very best pass rushers in the league, you're going to see a talent disparity there. But there's a reason why he stuck around this long. And again, if they feel like he can play multiple spots at least somewhat decently and you can finish a game with him, then he's probably still in the mix too. So they have options. It's just they've given Carman chance after chance after chance. He's technically now lost 3 battles. Even if I don't even think this was technically a true battle for him, it was just a chance for him to show that he can play a new position, a position that's more needed for him than the position that he's played in the past. But again, he's just continuing to he's practiced all at right tackle this year, and he still like showed like basically zero progress. So I don't know what that says about him and just just who he is, but it's not good if these other guys at this position aren't imploding like him.
Interesting situation if a final roster spot were to come down to Jackson Carman or Deontay Smith. Do you go with Smith because you feel like there's still a lot of development that you can mine out of there, or do you go with the former high pick and just kind of it would be to be a fly on that wall if that was the situation where a final positional pick there becomes between those two guys would be interesting. And I think again, you're talking about getting Smith reps at right tackle this week. I think that's where some of that homework's going to be done if that conversation does occur, right? I mean, I think they're just going to look at, hey, I mean, we tried Smith week 2. This is what we got at right tackle, and those are your reference points.
Well, it's all about what have you done for me lately, and just I touched on this I think a couple days ago. The career arc for Deontay Smith is insane.
It's weird
because as a 4th round pick, you got to remember he was touted to maybe start as a rookie at right guard, which was a damning indictment on what they had at that position in 2021. And then he got hurt, and then he didn't really play much. He was like a backup tight end, I think, for the first part of 2021. And then when he got in at tackle, I think for that last game of the year against the Browns, he was terrible. He didn't look like he should be on a roster. And then they didn't play last year, so we haven't really seen him that much. But he's clearly made some progressions into his 3rd year, and compared to Carman, who's at the best, he's stagnant compared to last year. Only one guy is shown to make a progression into his 3rd year, so that might be like the deciding factor if you were to decide between those two guys. But again, if you feel like Deontay Smith can at least be somewhat competent as a backup at multiple spots, and you're only somewhat confident that Carman can be a backup at one spot, like that kind of tells you that like there's more financial implications with cutting a 2nd round pick into his 3rd year. And I don't think Carman's getting cut primarily because of that, but I mean, if it comes down to it, there seems to be a clear answer.
Well, the maybe the final talking piece here this week, because I think we saw good things out of the defense in some degrees, right? The turnovers and Tyson Anderson and George, a lot of the young guys we had questions about in the secondary were kind of the ones that, answered a lot of questions at least last week. But they still gave up a lot of points, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But I mean, this is kind of one of those things where you go, okay, backup running back. What are the Bengals going to do here? Trevion Williams has an ankle injury that he's, kind of trying to come back from. And then, of course, you had the performances last week of Chris Evans, who had a nice run, but, still working on a couple of other things. I think he also had a decent kick return as well. But, still kind of working on a lot of things with Chris Evans. And then, you've got the rookie Chase Brown, who struggled to find some running room last week, but then did some things as a receiver and flashed in other ways as well. So, kind of a tight race there between those two. And then you add in Trevion Williams, those 3.
Every year, this team keeps 4 running backs at the start of the season, and I don't really see them deviating from that now, which when you run the numbers, you think that maybe 3 is probably the right way to go just so you can keep players at other more important spots. But I think because there's uncertainty in terms of how they're going to split the snaps behind Mixon, there's not a Pirine there who's like a clear number 2 3rd down guy in pass protection or just in 3rd down in general. I think with Williams' injury and now Chris Evans, who clearly seems to be earning more trust from the coaching staff, he looks better in pass pro. He just looks like a more decisive runner. There's still some kinks to work out with that, and they may have to just deal with that. But he looks like he's kind of taking advantage of the snaps that he's getting because of Williams' injury. And because Brown is still he's still a rookie. Like we saw kind of, that rawness to, the nuances of him pass protecting against Green Bay, and they might not trust him yet with that, and, rightfully so. So if Chris Evans is showing more than he has in the past 2 years, he may not be buried on the depth chart anymore, and they might just.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll probably keep 4 at this point, just because maybe things would be different if Williams was healthy, and like maybe Evans wouldn't have gotten as much of an opportunity, or if Evans continued to just be a guy that they don't necessarily trust. But I think that dynamic is changing a bit. So now it looks like 4 is going to be the number. It's just a matter of when Williams comes back, if he's still the clear number 2.
Evans is he's flashed some moments, and then the other day in practice, he beat, I believe it was Pratt down the sideline for a ball, and then it went through his hands, and you go, oh man, that was like, kind of I think it was a kind of a wheel route that he took up the sideline a little bit, and the ball went through his hands, and then you go, oh man, that's kind of your bread and butter. I remember that was the touchdown against the Lions, right? That play in the regular season as a rookie. So yeah, I mean, again, we joked about it, like touchdown per touch for Chris Evans is pretty high. But yeah, I mean, big weeks for him, and the Chase Brown this week here. We've got another super chat from Mr. Whisper. I guess this may be one of the only guys. Well, this may be a starter that gets either somewhat significant snaps, any snaps, that sort of thing. Volson, you've been at a couple of practices, John, and you have some takeaways and everything. I guess, this isn't necessarily preseason game 2, because I don't know that Volson will play in this game, maybe more a series or so. In the final one, we will see. But, obviously he's kind of, I guess, the least known commodity a bit on the starting offensive line. I don't mean that as a knock to him, but when you've got Orlando Brown, he's got 4 Pro Bowlers, and then you've got Jonah Williams, former first-round pick. The cast of characters, and Volson's kind of the one where you go, okay, how's he looking in year 2? There were ebbs and flows as a rookie. What do you see in this year so far from him?
I mean, we haven't seen very much. Obviously, he didn't play in that preseason game, so we've only seen kind of reps from training camp. I think he looks more or less the same as last year, which is not a bad thing. He's bigger, he's stronger. I think he's more aware, and things are slowing down for him. But I think his weaknesses are still kind of there. He kind of plays a little tall sometimes, so he kind of loses leverage. But the more reps that he gets, and he's gotten obviously plenty of reps as a starter this year in camp, the more he'll continue to kind of iron things out. I think the sentiment of this being the Bengals' best offensive line in recent memory is primarily because Jonah Williams has adapted to right tackle so well. Like, you have 2 solid tackles, you have a solid center, a solid guard, and then Volson, like Mr. Whisper saying, like being the biggest question mark. As long as he's no worse than he was last year, this is easily going to be a really good offensive line compared to what they've had in recent years. So a jump from Volson would be nice. I just don't think I've seen enough to say that that's imminent, I guess.
Good call on that. Thank you, Mr. Whisper. And we'll have that go to the Ken Riley 13 Foundation. Mr. Whisper, you need to send us either your not social security number, but your social media accounts, or a way to get a hold of you, because we want to. You're very generous to this program. We want to
drop the Venmo.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's something we want to do something nice for you. But we appreciate it. Thank you very much for that super chat. That'll go to the Ken Riley 13 Foundation as well. I know this isn't Burrow's not going to play this week, and we're waiting for kind of his arrival back at practice. I guess one thing that I did see, and maybe this is a total non sequitur to what we're talking about, but I guess one of the things that makes me feel somewhat better about it, and granted, this guy is a lot further in his career than Burrow is, but I did see a graphic, I believe it was on ESPN, that Aaron Rodgers is not going to play. I think it's Saturday night is the Jets game. And he has not played, I think, a preseason game since 2018, 2016, wow. Something like that. Yeah. Interesting stat that I saw today. And of course we know, I mean, last year was what it was with him, and, all kinds of different things, but I mean, in that time, he has still been an incredible player. So I guess we can take a bit of solace if Burrow does not play a preseason game, a preseason snap. Not necessarily what some of us want, I think, based on the start of last year. But I think we can kind of quell some of the stress there a little bit if we're going to use that as a barometer.
Yeah, so it doesn't seem like any of the offensive starters are playing this week, but the defense, they'll play probably like a drive, and I guess it'll be so like Burrow and the starters played a drive the last preseason game of 2021, and it ended up being 3 plays and they're off. That could be the same thing with the Bengals defense. Mike Hilton was asked about it. He said, "Yeah, this is going to be a series. It could be 3 plays, it could be 4 plays, but it'll just be that drive and done." And he gave 2 reasons for this, Anthony, and only one of them kind of made sense to me, and that's being that the secondary is mostly new. It's guys that haven't really played together before. Cam Taylor-Britt played here last year, but he wasn't a week 1 starter. But now Dax Hill, Nick Scott are both going to be new starters at safety. Just for a position group that relies so much on communication, 3-4 reps is not a lot, but it's at least you establish something, right? And then you go into the season with that. The other reason that he said, though, and I understood the sentiment, but I felt like he was kind of taking blame that wasn't really his to take. It was that he credited last year's slow start being 0-2 to the starters not playing in the preseason. But the defense for the Bengals last year was fine out of the gate. Like, they played well against Pittsburgh, they played really well against Dallas. There was a couple drives against the Cowboys that kind of stuck out, but it wasn't the defense that needed those preseason reps. It was definitely the offense, and they couldn't get it because Burrow was recovering from appendicitis and everything, and they're not going to get that chance now with Burrow not being healthy enough, or they're not going to push him back to play preseason games. So it'll be nice to see the starters out there, but Mike Hilton, no one really blames the defense for starting 0-2 last year.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, 23 points given up to the Steelers, and that's on what was that? 4 interceptions, 5 total turnovers, something like that by Burrow in that one, right? And then, and they only gave up 23 points when you're like -4 in the turnover margin or something. So, I mean, that's kind of crazy. And then, of course, the 20 points only to Dallas. The only kind of I would have with that Dallas score is the fact that you did have it was a Cooper Rush, right? The backup playing in that game. So you're like, well, but they're on the road there, and all of that. But 20 points on the road is, especially with who the Bengals have on offense, is not a mountain to overcome. So yeah, I mean, but I like the attitude. I like I don't necessarily agree with the sentiment, like you said, but I like the headspace where it's like, hey, this isn't good enough. What we did last year isn't good enough. So I think that plays into a little bit of this supposed, as I've been calling it, at least a little more business approach, at least from some of the stuff that we saw last year. But I think the camaraderie's there, and the jovial nature in general is there. I don't mean to take away from that, but I just think there's a strong mindset in that locker room, and that stuff like that shows. So we've already breezed through this episode. We're close to an hour in, so that's gonna probably start doing it for us. John, let's drop the mic and get on out of here, my guy. What do you got for us?
6.5 point dogs, I think, this weekend. 38 over and under. Well, let's cover the spread this time. I love Desmond Ridder, but let's see an interception on Des Ridder. He might not throw a pass, but I don't know.
Yeah. How are you feeling about him going forward, Ridder? As
give him a chance.
Yeah,
give him a chance.
Well,
I don't know how good the Falcons are going to be this year. They're in a terrible division, so they might just find themselves to 7 or 8 wins. But selfishly, I don't want them to draft another quarterback. But if they get the chance to, get Caleb Williams, obviously they should go do that. But I love seeing the Bearcats start, and I want to see him start for as long as he can.
Yeah, well, it should be a fun one. I don't have a ton myself, just that we're working on bringing on some other cool guests like Ken Riley II, who joined us today. We're working on doing that and doing some other cool things with the channel, and of course the podcast channel itself, with all of the different shows that you have to choose from there. But we appreciate all of you tuning in live, or if you're listening after the fact, we appreciate that as well. It was a fun time talking with Ken Riley II, reliving his weekend in Canton. And I mean, man, couldn't be a nicer, more genuine guy than him, and obviously a good reflection of his father.
I mean, just the absolute best representation that his dad could have asked for. Just the model guy for sure.
Yep. Class. That's for sure. Well, that's going to do it for us this week. We'll probably be bringing you some more stuff. I know we had a little bit. We pushed back from Wednesday, so we'll be doing a post game show tomorrow and talking about maybe some of these players that we mentioned here and the result of the game. So we'll be doing that after the game. and some other fun stuff coming up on the channel and on the podcast channel. You got to keep it to the Cincy Jungle podcast channel. You got to keep it to cincyjungle.com. And, of course, over at my guys, John's site, A to Z Sports, for all of your Bengals opinions, news, coverage, analysis, all that stuff. We've got you covered. So keep it to that. John, thanks, man. This has been a fun episode, and appreciate you.
This time next year, we'll have Ken Anderson on talking about his enshrinement. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. It's all about putting that stuff out there, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's all about putting it out there, and it's going to happen. So, yeah, let's hope. Take care, everybody.